fire extinguisher. All right, and of course, for the latest, we speak to our correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who joins us now from New York. A very good afternoon to you, Sherwin. Lots of moving parts to the story, as was the case in the last couple of days that we've spoken. Several resignations now, calls for removal and impeachment. A federal prosecutor has not ruled out charging President Trump. What is the latest now?
Right. As you say, many avenues that we are following in terms of the story since those disruptions we saw on Capitol Hill. The House has said that the House of Representatives, that is, Flo, has said that it would move to impeach the president if the vice president and a majority of President Trump's cabinet does not invoke the 25th Amendment. This is an amendment that allows the vice president to convene a meeting of the cabinet and get a majority of those cabinet members. At our count, it's around 8 cabinet members to remove the sitting president from office because they deem him to be unfit. We are also hearing from the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Michael Sherwin, no relation of mine, but probably a good guy. His office is investigating all actors involved in Wednesday's riot. Anyone, he says, that had a role and the evidence fits the elements of a crime, they are going to be charged. He says we are looking at all actors, not only the people that went into the building, and the big read into that is that might extend very much to the President of the United States, that moments before those riots ensued on Capitol Hill, the President of the United States was addressing his supporters at a Save America march. Let's listen to what the President, Flo, had to say there and why so many arrows are pointing in his direction in terms of having instigated these people descending on Congress. Let's watch.
If we allow this group of people to illegally take over our country, because it's illegal when the votes are illegal, when the way they got there is illegal, when the states that vote are given false and fraudulent information, the best is yet to come. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol, and we're going to try and give, the Democrats are hopeless. They're never voting for anything. Not even one vote. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help, we're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah, so it's that language, Flo. We're going to try to give them the kind of pride and boldness. Of course, within that speech, the president also used the word fight. We are going to continue fighting, and that we are never going to concede. And it's language that has Nancy Pelosi, the current Speaker of the House of Representatives, saying things like this. Let's watch what she had to say yesterday.
In calling for this seditious act, the President has committed an unspeakable assault on our nation and our people. I join the Senate Democratic leader in calling on the Vice President to remove this President by immediately invoking the 25th Amendment. If the Vice President and the Cabinet do not act, the Congress may be prepared to move forward with impeachment. When you have the 25th Amendment invoked, that would be calling upon the Vice President, as we hope to do, to take the lead and with a majority of the Cabinet to be able to unseat the President of the United States. A very dangerous person who should not continue in office. This is urgent. This is emergency of the highest magnitude.
This is emergency of the highest magnitude, Flo. That's the sentiment from the House Speaker, essentially the top Democrat in the House in the United States Congress. And it is her House that came under attack. And so we are seeing a lot of reports today about how the President of the United States is considering pardoning himself before he leaves office, even though the legal parameters of such a move remain a bit grey. It's a bit of a grey area as to whether it would have legal fortitude moving forward, Flo.
Yeah, we're getting an idea from President-elect Joe Biden of how he will address certain issues. Interestingly, yesterday addressing the demographic issue that has been so evident to so many, how the police handled the white rioters that stormed the Capitol as opposed to what we saw during the Black Lives Matter protest. We touched on this briefly yesterday. Essentially, he was calling out the hypocrisy. What did he say exactly?
Yeah, he spoke yesterday. He was introducing members of his future cabinet, including his new Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, you'll remember, in 2016 was nominated by former President Barack Obama to the Supreme Court and was never given a hearing by the Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. They just didn't seat Merrick Garland, give him a hearing several months before the election that year. So a full circle moment for Merrick Garland. And during that nomination ceremony yesterday, Biden talking about receiving a text message from his granddaughter, Finnegan Biden, who is attending her final year at Pennsylvania University in the United States. And she sent her grandfather a text message of the riot police as they stood, the military fatigues outside the Lincoln Memorial, essentially a federal precinct in Washington, D.C., when Black Lives Matter protesters, and there's the picture of it, how prepared law enforcement was when Black Lives Matter descended on a federal institution in Washington, D.C., and comparing that to the scenes we saw on Capitol Hill on Wednesday. He tweeted later, he said, "No one can tell me that if it had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesters, that they wouldn't have been treated differently than the mob that stormed the Capitol. We all know that that is true, and it is unacceptable." He also reiterated that in his remarks yesterday. So very much really hitting the nail on the head here. A lot of people concerned and asking a lot of questions as to why the response from the Capitol Police was so feeble, why there wasn't greater coordination with the DC Metro Police, why the National Guard was not in position, why there was just not the level of coordination available, given the fact that authorities had a heads up of what was coming. We knew that thousands of people were going to descend on Washington, D.C., and Trump supporters tend to be heavily armed supporters. So the concern here is what led to this failure. We heard Mayor Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., yesterday call for a Congressional Commission of Inquiry, really to establish the facts. And we're also seeing, Flo, that the Sergeant of Arms of the House of Representatives, the Sergeant of Arms of the House of the Senate, and the chief of the Capitol Police have all now resigned due to this breach and this failure on Capitol Hill on Wednesday.
Yeah, and you know, just to go back to what Nancy Pelosi was talking about in that clip that you played for us, it does seem that there are also now questions already being raised about Trump's future in politics, not just about the now. Yesterday we spoke about the issue of impeachment, and you were really painting a picture for us of what happens during the process of impeachment and what that would mean for Trump going forward. And then we've also been talking about the 25th Amendment, obviously, just so that people can get Trump out in the next before the 12 days are up.
Right.
Where exactly did it seem to really be leaning to at this time? Because it does seem from conversations, or what I'm seeing online anyway, that there's this push that Trump must pay even in future in terms of his political career.
So if he were to be impeached for a second time, that would just mean that, he would become, if he were impeached a second time, that would just be a branding exercise in a sense, because he would then be labeled for life as the first president, sitting president of the United States to be impeached twice. The question then becomes, how quickly can a Senate trial start because that's the real critical part, right? The Senate trial that convicts, that leads to a conviction or an exoneration. And the question is, how quickly could a Senate trial happen? Who would lead that Senate trial? Because you have the two Georgia Senate races that went Democrat, handing Chuck Schumer, the Democratic minority leader, the majority status in the Senate. So the power of convening that trial would then move from the Republican current Senate majority leader, Mitch McConnell, to the Democrat Chuck Schumer. So how quickly would he be able to move in instituting that trial? And will they convict, right? You require 67 of the 100 senators, which is a 2/3 majority, would include a number of Republican senators, to convict the president. Then the question becomes, how quickly can that move? We've only got 12 days before he leaves office. There is precedent flow for an impeachment trial to happen even once someone has left office. In 1876, a war secretary of the United States was impeached, resigned, and the Senate trial still happened post the resignation. So there is precedent for this. So the president, whether he resigned before that trial or his term in office ran out, could then still be tried in an impeachment and convicted. The question is, would you be able to get enough Republicans on board to convict the president? Similarly, with the 25th Amendment, there's a process to be followed. The president will be able to appeal. That could delay his removal for 3 weeks or so. We understand that during that appeal process, the vice president would be the acting president of the United States. So it's not like Trump would just disappear. The question is, which avenue is going to be quicker here? And it's very much a gray area as to where we go from here in the days ahead.
Yeah, I want to talk about the resignations. I actually saw one of your tweets talking about, and I suppose these are sort of the top resignations. Then you were talking about Elaine Chao, the Transport Secretary, Betsy DeVos, the Education Secretary. What I tweeted after seeing your tweets and those resignations was, I'm not particularly fooled by these people sort of jumping ship. It's really a case of let's jump off whilst the ship is sinking. That's how I see it. But then I also saw another aspect to it, and I wonder if this is something that we can talk to. It does seem as well that these particular people who are resigning at this time are also trying to remove themselves from having to participate in the 25th Amendment proceedings. So they kind of have their own agendas. I don't see this as them suddenly seeing the light and suddenly realizing that Trump is this person that they haven't seen in the last few years, who they enabled throughout this time.
Right.
Is it more a case of jumping ship, or is it really a case of, I don't want to be part of the people that are participating or having to vote in the process, whatever this process is, of the 25th Amendment that pushes Trump out before the 12 days?
I mean, none of those need to be independent. I mean, the both can be true. I don't want to be part of a process that is going to directly take on the president and remove him from office and have to deal with his supporters as a result of that action. But also, I'm not going to hang around here because this is a bridge too far. I mean, this is the seat of the United States government that was invaded by a mob of thugs, essentially, threatening the life of lawmakers, the leader of the House of Representatives, the leader of the Senate, the vice president was chairing that meeting, was presiding over that joint session. So this was a direct attack on him. We understand the second lady was on Capitol Hill with her husband. His daughter was there. So this was not just an attack on Mike Pence, but an attack on Mike Pence and his family. So, certainly speculation is that he's not happy with President Trump right now. And this would be a great opportunity for him to use the powers vested in the vice presidency to remove the president from office. But yeah, it's certainly a murky area. They are jumping as the Titanic is pretty much underwater already, but also, sort of thinking of their political futures, no doubt, not wanting to be seen to have played a role in the direct removal of the president and what that would mean in terms of his support base that is still loyal to this day, but resigning so as to almost save face because they recognize that what happened on Wednesday was unacceptable. And what we are hearing from a number of Republicans, including the Republican senator from Nebraska, Ben Sasse, who said earlier on a morning television show today that he would vote to convict in the Senate. So that's one of the first Republicans to go on the record to say if the articles of impeachment reach the Senate, as one expects could happen as early as next week, if the 25th Amendment is not invoked by Mike Pence, that this could go to trial in the Senate. Schumer will probably be the Senate majority leader soon, just as soon as those two Senate races in Georgia are certified and the reins of power shift from McConnell to him. And so we could see that process move very quickly. But the key number is 67 senators are needed to convict. That would require 17 senators, at least from the Republican side, to switch to the Democrats.
All right, Sherwin, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much for that in-depth report into U.S. politics. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Good to see you, Bob.
All right, that's our correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease joining us there from New York, giving us the latest really on what's happening in the US. A lot really to unpack, as you can see, and certainly in the next couple of days there will be more to discuss. Let's take a short break. Do stay with us.